November 10th, 1975. 7:10 in the evening. On the darkened bridge of an American ore freighter in the middle of Lake Superior, a 63-year-old captain named Ernest McSorley keys his radio one last time. Outside, the storm is the worst he has seen in 44 years on the water. 10 miles astern, another freighter has just asked him how he is making out with his problems. McSorley answers in 4 words. We are holding our own. In 17 minutes, every one of the 29 men aboard the Edmund Fitzgerald will be dead. There will be no mayday, no lifeboats lowered, no survivors, and not one single body ever recovered. The largest ship on the Great Lakes will simply disappear from a radar screen, gone in 530 feet of freezing water, just 17 miles from shelter. And half a century later, no one can say for certain why. To understand how a ship this big could vanish without a sound, you have to understand what she was. When the Edmund Fitzgerald slid into the water at River Rouge, Michigan in the summer of 1958, she was the biggest thing that had ever floated on the Great Lakes. 729 feet of riveted steel, longer than 2 football fields laid end to end. So large that the crowd at her launch was said to number more than 10,000 people. They called her the pride of the American side, the mighty Fitz, the big Fitz. For 17 years, she was the queen of the lakes, a record-setting workhorse that hauled iron ore from the mines of Minnesota and Wisconsin down to the steel mills that built post-war America. She was not a passenger liner. She carried no tourists, no honeymooners, no children. She carried taconite, small gray pellets of processed iron ore, and a crew of working sailors who knew her better than they knew their own homes. On the afternoon of November 9th, 1975, she took on a full load at Superior, Wisconsin. 26,000 tons of taconite, bound for a steel mill on the Detroit River near a place called Zug Island. It was a routine run, one of the last of the shipping season before the lakes froze for the winter. At her wheel stood Captain Ernest McSorley, 63 years old, more than 4 decades at sea. A quiet, respected master who had told friends that this season might be his last before retirement. As the Fitzgerald pulled away from the dock that afternoon, a second freighter was leaving on nearly the same course, the Arthur M. Anderson, under Captain Jesse Cooper. The 2 ships fell into a loose company across the lake, the Fitzgerald in front, the Anderson a few miles behind. And far to the west, the Weather Service was tracking something the captains already knew was coming. A storm. A big one. Climbing up out of the plains, aimed straight at the largest body of fresh water on Earth.
Lake Superior is not like the ocean. It is larger than some seas, 350 miles long with cold black water hundreds of feet deep beneath it. And in November, it becomes one of the most dangerous places on the planet. The sailors have a name for the storms that come in that month: the Witch of November. When a low-pressure system rolls up from the south and collides with Arctic air pouring down from Canada, the lake can throw up winds of hurricane force and waves the size of houses, in water so cold that a man overboard has only minutes to live. By the early hours of November 10th, the storm had arrived. The Weather Service upgraded its warnings through the night. First, gale, then storm. Both captains made the same decision. Instead of the usual track, they swung north, hugging the Canadian shore, trying to use the land itself to shelter from the worst of the wind. It worked for a while. But as the day wore on, the storm only deepened. By the afternoon, the Anderson was recording sustained winds over 50 knots and waves of 16, then 20, then 25 feet. Green water, solid waves, not spray, was rolling the full length of the Fitzgerald's deck. Somewhere in the early afternoon, the Fitzgerald passed close to Caribou Island, near a shallow patch of water called the 6 Fathom Shoal. Whether she scraped bottom there, no one will ever know. But what happened next suggests that somewhere, something had begun to go wrong. At around 3:30 in the afternoon, McSorley called the Anderson. His voice was calm, but his words were not. He had a fence rail down. He had lost 2 vent covers, and the Fitzgerald had developed a list. She was leaning to one side. She was taking on water. He asked the Anderson to stay close and to keep an eye on him. Then the Fitzgerald lost her radar. Both sets. Blind. In the middle of the worst storm in years, on a lake full of shoals and islands, the largest ship on the Great Lakes could no longer see where she was going. McSorley made another call, this time to ask any vessel nearby to help him navigate. The Anderson answered. From 10 miles back, Captain Cooper and his mates began guiding the Fitzgerald toward the safety of Whitefish Bay by reading their own radar and relaying her position back to her, mile by mile. By late afternoon, McSorley said something that the men on the Anderson would never forget. He told them this was one of the worst seas he had ever been in. McSorley, 44 years on the water, a man who almost never complained, said it was one of the worst he had ever seen. The waves now were 30 feet and more. The wind was gusting close to 70 miles an hour, and night was falling. There was reason still to hope. The Fitzgerald was huge and she was tough, and Whitefish Bay and shelter was now only a few hours ahead. On the radio, the talk between the two ships was steady, professional, almost reassuring. But the Fitzgerald was listing. She was blind. She was taking water somewhere they could not see. And she was riding lower and heavier with every wave that crossed her deck.
By 7 o'clock that evening, a heavy snow squall was sweeping across the lake. For a time, the Anderson could not even see the Fitzgerald, not by eye, not through the blinding snow. She existed now only as a faint shape on the Anderson's radar screen, a few miles ahead. At around 7:10, the Anderson's first mate, Morgan Clark, called the Fitzgerald on the radio. He wanted to warn her about another ship in the area and to check one more time how she was doing. "How are you making out with your problems?" he asked. And Ernest McSorley gave the last words anyone would ever hear from the Edmund Fitzgerald. "We are holding our own. Holding our own. Not sinking. Not in distress. Holding." It was the kind of thing a captain says when things are bad, but still under control. There was no fear in his voice, no alarm, no request for help. On the Anderson, the mate signed off. Normal. Routine. 2 ships talking across a storm. The Snow Squall began to clear. On the Anderson's bridge, they waited for the Fitzgerald to reappear out of the white, the way she always had. She did not. Where there should have been a 700-foot ship lit up against the dark, there was nothing. No lights, no shape on the horizon. Captain Cooper went to his radar. The blip that had been the Edmund Fitzgerald was gone. He told himself it was the weather, a trick of the storm, clutter on the screen. He called the Fitzgerald on the radio. Nothing. He called again. Nothing. He began calling other ships, asking if anyone could see her,
asking if anyone had heard from her. One by one, they answered the same way. No contact. Somewhere in those few minutes between holding our own and the empty screen, the Edmund Fitzgerald had gone to the bottom of Lake Superior. She did not break apart slowly on the surface. She did not have time to send a distress call. She did not launch a single lifeboat. 729 feet of steel, 26,000 tons of cargo, and 29 men were there one moment and gone the next. So fast that the men on the ship behind her never even knew the instant it happened. Whatever took her in seconds. The two halves of the Fitzgerald would later be found on the lake bed, 530 feet down. The bow sitting upright, the stern capsized and torn away. A field of taconite spilled across the mud between them. The lifeboats, when they were found, had not been launched. They had been destroyed, twisted and torn, ripped from the ship as she went down. No one had been given the chance to use them.
Captain Cooper of the Anderson was the one who raised the alarm. For a long stretch of that night, the authorities struggled to grasp that a ship the size of the Fitzgerald could simply be gone. There was little nearby to send, an aircraft, a buoy tender hours away. And so it was Cooper himself who, after finally reaching the shelter of Whitefish Bay, turned the Anderson around and sailed back out into the same storm that had just swallowed the Fitzgerald, to search for survivors. Other ships joined him through the night. They found debris, lifeboats smashed and empty, life rafts, life jackets, oars, fenders, and other wreckage scattered across the heaving black water. But of the 29 men, Captain McSorley, his officers, his engineers, his deckhands, the cooks, the men who had crewed her for years, they found no one. Not that night. Not in the days that followed. Not ever. Lake Superior is so cold that below a certain depth, the water never warms enough for a body to rise. The old sailors put it more simply. Superior, they say, never gives up her dead. All 29 men remain to this day with their ship. The investigations began almost at once, and in a sense, they have never truly ended. The Coast Guard concluded that the most likely cause was flooding through the cargo hatches, that the heavy steel covers over the hold had not been fully clamped down, and that wave after wave had poured in, unseen, until the Fitzgerald was too heavy to rise and dove straight to the bottom. Others disagreed, fiercely. The shipping men argued she had grounded on that shoal near Caribou Island, tearing her hull open below the waterline. Still others believed she was simply overwhelmed, that 3 giant waves, the rogues the sailors call the Three Sisters, broke over her in succession and pushed her under. Each theory fits some of the evidence. None of them fits all of it. What is certain is this: she was found, broken in two, in 530 feet of water, just 17 miles from the safety of Whitefish Bay. So close. In 1995, divers and a remotely operated vehicle descended to the wreck and brought up her bronze bell. In its place, on the hull, they left a new bell, engraved with the names of all 29 men. The original now hangs in a museum at Whitefish Point, where it is rung once for each life, every year on the 10th of November. You may already know this story, even if you have never heard a single fact about it, because a year after she sank, a songwriter named Gordon Lightfoot turned her loss into one of the most haunting ballads ever recorded, and the Edmund Fitzgerald passed out of the world of shipping records and into American legend. In a church in Detroit, the one the song calls the Maritime Sailors' Cathedral,
A bell still tolls for her crew. 29 men, 17 miles from home. 17 minutes from a radio call that said everything was under control. We are holding our own. They were the last words from the largest ship ever lost on the Great Lakes, and the last words of the men who carried her secret all the way to the bottom of Lake Superior.